Kia ora. He taha e mea nui o te ao. He tangata, he tangata, he tangata. Kia ora rā, te whānau whānui. E nā mana, e nā reo, ne rā te mihi nui, kia koutou. Kōrua pehu, sorry about this. Is this working? Sorry. I'll just get you up to my speed. Kōrua pehu he mauna, ko mōwhongo te awa. Ko Ngāti Pakeha toki iwi. No whanganui a tara aho. Ko Nan O Sullivan aho. No reira, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa. I have in te reo the language of Maori, the Indigenous people of Aotearoa, New Zealand, introduce myself by telling you who I am, what connects me to New Zealand, and who I owe that connection to. It's a nod to the past, a show of respect, some might say, but it is more than that. It is so much more than that. It's an acknowledgement of relationships, spanning the past, the present, and the future, and of the respect and responsibility embedded between people and place within Te Ao Māori, the Māori worldview. So kia ora, and thank you for the last few days. As new members of the World Design Organisation, I was really honoured to be asked to speak today. This is our first time at the Assembly and my first time in Hyderabad, and thank you for a wonderful time. As a turn of events, we came here really to listen, but a turn of events has me standing here, so I'm going to do a little bit more talking than I am listening for the moment. So I'd like to acknowledge the welcome, but I'd also like to acknowledge the generous kōrero, the discussions that so many have had over the last few days of this event. I'd also like to acknowledge my colleague David Hakara, who has been such a critical part of my learning journey and of our journey here this week. Hoki muri, kia mua. It's a pre-colonial whakatauki, a traditional saying. That means let us walk backwards into the future. And we've heard this sentiment a number of occasions over the last few days, and I'm gladly going to add to that conversation. Our lives are negotiated territories of time, space, and resources, and design's capacity and capability to contribute to the development of more inclusive, equitable, sustaining, and sustainable futures has become fundamental to our discipline. We've heard time and time again that designers are now required to understand complexities born of highly diverse and often contentious cultural, societal, and global issues and play pivotal roles within the resolutions or interventions sought. So today I want to discuss ways in which we might embed Indigenous wisdom within design education to better equip fledgling designers as they too endeavour to engage design in a way that enables positive impact. And I use the word enable quite purposefully. So I hope to illustrate to you by enabling connections, nurturing connections to both people and to place. It is, as is so often imbued in many Indigenous worldviews, the development of cultural, environmental, social and economic health and well-being can be enhanced. If you haven't guessed already, I'm specifically going to focus on the New Zealand Māori worldview, Te Ao Māori, where values like respect, reciprocity, guardianship, but very importantly, self-determination guide the past and present future lives of both people and place. The essence of the Māori worldview is relationships, not just with people, but also between the natural and the spiritual worlds, where both tangible and intangible relationships hold relevance and importance. Hinere Mead celebrates Māori knowledge as having come out of hiding and is now in the bright light of day. And encouraged by this, I want to share some of my thoughts around and efforts within our curriculum developments at Victoria University of Wellington to foster and enable the design of sustaining, holistic and inclusive futures by acknowledging the value of Indigenous wisdom to our environmental, creative and social pursuits. At a 2018 DRS conference, Renata Leato stated, "The leading role of the modern man entails that we live on a planet with only one storyline, the heroic story of the modern man." In the same vein, Arturo Escobar explained, "This one storyline was conceived from a Euro-American experience and exported to many regions over the past few hundred years." And almost as if they were in a live conversation, Leitao suggests, "We can only become aware of the features and flaws of our worldview in contrast to other storylines." So today, I would like us to consider an alternative narrative, but importantly, first and foremost, is the need to acknowledge that Indigenous knowledge is not old knowledge or knowledge only relevant to distant, now outmoded times. Quite distinctly, this knowledge, or quite distinctly from Western knowledge, Indigenous knowledge has continued to evolve through its own resilient and quite rebellious practices. Ka mua ki muri, walking backwards into the future, acknowledges past, present and future relationships within the Māori worldview. Within our design curriculum at Victoria, we are guided by the values embedded within Te Ao Māori. These are tikanga Māori. And these also guide our strategic planning at the university level, as well as our curriculum, and they include akoranga, whānakutanga, whaimataranga, kiaikitanga, mānakitanga, rangatiratanga, meaning a lifetime of learning and teaching, collaboration, curiosity, guardianship, reciprocity, and again, autonomy and self-determination. For the purposes of today's discussion, I'd like to focus on 3 tikanga values and parallel these to the relevant SDGs to illustrate the power of this whakawhanangatanga, authentic and potent connection within the design process. The values that we will combine are whanangatanga, the nurturing of relationships and shared experiences, kakiakitanga, guardianship and care, and the rangatiratanga, self-determination and autonomy. And I hope to clarify for you how fundamental values like these are when considering design's approach to problems of individual or collective well-being and the development of more equitable and inclusive negotiations of resources and responsibilities. On the 24th of September 2018, the Right Honourable Jacinda Ardern, the Prime Minister of New Zealand, delivered her maiden speech to the United Nations General Assembly. This was only months before the hideous shootings in Christchurch, where she would have to walk the walk, so to speak. She stated, "We must double down our efforts to work as a global community. We must rediscover our shared belief in the value rather than the harm of connectedness, whanangatanga." The connectedness Ardern refers to is embedded in Te Ao Māori, which holds at its essence relationships between humans that are both natural and spiritual worlds. Prudently, SDG 17, partnership for all the goals, or in te reo mahitahi, working as one, seems to sit comfortably alongside whanangatanga, shared experiences, especially we consider the global efforts and work that needs to be done in this space. To celebrate our commitment to the SDGs and Sustainability Week, one of my design social innovation colleagues collaborated with our Vice Provost Maori to translate the SDGs into te reo. The intention was to enrich and encourage the use and understanding of te reo of the SDGs in New Zealand. The next series of images depicts design work done by our students who have considered Te Ao Māori, tikanga Māori, and the relevant SDGs to navigate their process and thereby shape their outputs. I will begin with kakiakitanga, guardianship. This word and its meaning hold specific relevance to conversations of colonialism in New Zealand, within New Zealand's joint history with Māori, and it highlights the fundamental cultural differences. Māori consider themselves stewards to the land, the sea, and the sky. A relationship is one of guardianship, not ownership. This perhaps oversimplified explanation nevertheless enables, I hope, an appreciation of a totally different approach to how Māori treat the precious resources of our planet that the planet gifts us. Although not a Māori adage, it is a Pacifica one with a K. This belief says all things in nature, mind, and society stand in eternal relations of exchange. The symbiotic relationships both this adage and kakiakitanga offer, in my opinion, are profound for our discipline. Here, Lionel of Samoan heritage used Goal 14, Life Below Water, Orangi Moana, alongside kakiakitanga, guardianship. Troubled by the abuse of the Pacific Ocean, which his ancestors have navigated and been surrounded by forever, Lionel gathered waste from the ocean, recycled it into filament, and 3D printed beautifully crafted cultural artefacts for the tourists to take off the island, a little circular economy of his own. The cultural artefacts he produced were not trinkets to once again be thrown away, but treasures. Sarah established the Māori calendar for planting, for horticulture, to enable the regeneration of old knowledge, offering individual and collective autonomy, self-sufficiency. The next work engages Goal 4, quality education, akaranga pai, both teaching and learning as a constant state. And Goal 10, reduced inequalities, mana oriti, mana meaning respect, alongside panangatanga, collective experiences. Now, not all collective experiences are positive. This work is part of a master's thesis done by St Andrew Matautia, and it holds great value to me because it was during this research that I was rendered the student and Andrew the teacher. He had for 3 years in his undergraduate study felt invisible, unheard. It was a throwaway statement during his bachelor's when he asked me how he could do better. And I said, go deeper. Tell me about who you are and what you're connected to. And he hasn't stopped telling us since. His project discussed the shared space of design education and how we might amend the volume levels on some of the voices in there, mine included. The last project speaks to rangatiratanga, autonomy, and offers more of the methodology behind our Design for Social Innovation program. We felt guided by tikanga that further development was required within the participatory approaches and models offered. Again, we looked to Māori practice. In 1982, Sir Mason Dury designed a holistic model of health and well-being. Importantly, it was by Māori, for Māori. Whara tapu whā, the four cornerstones, is a holistic strength-based model that considers well-being in terms of social, physical, mental, and spiritual capabilities. It is a multi-pronged approach which depicts the four walls of one's home, your whare, as working in unison, enabling oneself to be whole. The walls represent mental well-being, physical well-being, social well-being, and spiritual well-being. And as an aside, it has also inspired the new well-being budget in New Zealand that replaces the traditional and limited GDP as a measure of our wealth. Whāra tapu whā moves away from the Western health models in which services are delivered by outsider experts. And the correlations to the now hopefully outmoded Western models of designing by and designing for, I believe it evident. This model evokes connectivity, whanaungatanga, guardianship, kakiakatanga, and autonomy, rangatiratanga, as key determinants. And in my opinion, holds great amount of relevance to numerous, if not all, the SDGs. Importantly, and perhaps where design still has some work to do, whārautapawha places the agency into the hands of the individual or community seeking it, and ensures that decisions around stakeholder participation, methodology, evidence, intervention, communication, facilitation of outcomes, and distribution of the funds are in the hands of those whose lives, whose everyday, whose lands, whose children and grandchildren are to be impacted. Whārautapawha encourages space in which meaningful relationships can be nurtured and maintained. These relationships acknowledge local, traditional, everyday and place-based practices, beliefs, assumptions and wisdoms. In addition, they demonstrate respect and reciprocity between participants and negotiate roles and responsibilities in order to enable both collectives and individuals to determine their own lives and the lives of the next generations. These next two projects address challenging moments in life, immigration and death, and seek to foster relationships, offer care and guardianship, but importantly, enable and respect the autonomy we all deserve. Nicole, after a personal experience of immigration to New Zealand as a child, sought to create a playbook that broke down the physical understanding of home as a single place, but rather a network of relationships, past, present, and future. Jeremiah looked to offer better understanding and respect of our differences by looking through the lens of a shared experience, the death of a loved one. Within tikanga Māori, autonomy is considered fundamental to the success of growth or change. Whārautapawha asks for the reassessment of who makes the decisions. So to round up, over the last few days, I've heard and seen some wonderful examples of curriculum development and heard a number of exciting approaches and challenging endeavours. Our inspirations and/or collaborations for curriculum development and research have included the wonderful work of the DESIS Network and Transition Design. Their work and contributions, along with so much of what I have seen and heard at the Assembly, are quite simply mind-blowing. But for this talk, I want to show a simple diagram of how we scaffold and support students' capabilities and capacity over their studies, guiding them also to a moment of self-determination, agency, if you will. As noted on the first day in the Education and Research Forum, one of the speakers said, "We need to seek patterns that connect things that seemingly do not connect." Whanganangatanga. And we start our first year students with this challenge, to connect themselves to a larger collective by creating patterns of connection within their cultural diversity. We seek at this early stage not to teach or preach, but to spark interest by looking for something they have yet to know what it looks like. It's a pathway of discovery. Their second year, students are encouraged to care, become engaged, respect difference. And their third year encourages the volume of their voice. And beyond that, rangatiratanga, the confidence to act or be. And I think we all agree that design has moved beyond new ways of seeing, new ways of doing, to new ways of being. We believe that Te Ao Māori offers an amazing platform from which to catapult our students into great and meaningful design work. To quote Ahmed Asari, who I had the pleasure of spending some time with at Carnegie Mellon earlier this year. In a world where vast global systems of design technologies mediate and modify human existence, it becomes increasingly important for designers to develop better and more nuanced understandings of what human difference is and how we might, as a collective, benefit from this knowledge. And in response, I offer manaakitanga, respect for all that connects us, ngā manakuri, empathy towards everything that connects us, and kakiakitanga, guardianship of all that connects us, as a new way of being and designing more positive, inclusive, sustainable relationships between people and place. Kia kaha. Thank you.